You're on a mountain at sunrise. There's silence, nothing but wind and sky and the weight of your own thoughts. You've climbed to the top hoping to find something meaning, clarity, maybe even God. But when you reach the summit, there's nothing waiting for you. No answer, no revelation, just another horizon. In that moment, something breaks. But in the same moment, something else awakens. That's where Camus begins, not at the top of the mountain, but at the bottom of the illusion. The illusion that there is something out there that will finally make everything make sense.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We've all been trained to search. From the moment we're conscious, we're told life is a puzzle. That somewhere there's a big answer. That if we just look hard enough, meditate long enough, read deeply enough, travel far enough, we'll find it. Meaning, purpose, a reason for all of this. But Camus looks you in the eyes and says, what if there is no meaning? What if the universe doesn't care? What if the search itself is the trap that keeps you from ever being free? This isn't nihilism. It's rebellion. It's defiance. Because Camus doesn't say life is meaningless. He says life is absurd. And the absurd is the collision between your need for meaning and the silence of the world. You scream your questions into the void, and nothing answers. Not because there's nothing there, but because the universe isn't built to answer questions. It just is. And you are here, awake and conscious, bursting with questions that may never have answers. So what do? You could despair. You could give up. Or you could do something far more radical. You could stop searching. You could stop demanding meaning and start creating it. Not because it's true, but because it's yours. That's the core of Camus' philosophy. Not to find meaning, but to live without it. To stand in front of the absurd with your eyes wide open and say, I will not surrender. I will live fully, even if the universe never tells me why. But that's terrifying, isn't it? Because if there's no meaning out there, then the responsibility is on you. You can't blame fate, God, the stars, or destiny. You are free. And freedom is a terrifying gift. It means you are responsible for your joy, your choices, your courage, your cowardice. There's no cosmic plan to fall back on. Just you, just now, just this. Camus gives us the myth of Sisyphus. A man cursed by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to have it crash back down every time he reaches the top. Most would call that punishment. Camus calls it a mirror, because your life is that boulder. You wake up, you work, you struggle, you love, you suffer. And then you do it again, over and over, knowing it might all fall apart, knowing there's no final reward. But what if that's not the tragedy? What if that's the triumph? Camus says we must imagine Sisyphus happy, because he owns his fate. He looks at the absurdity and says, I will push the rock anyway. I will love this task. I will find joy in the struggle, not in the reward. And that is where freedom begins. When you stop needing life to justify itself. When you stop asking the mountain to explain why you're climbing. When you just climb and feel the wind and see the sky and let that be enough. Now think about your own life. How much of your anxiety comes from the belief that you're supposed to figure it out? That there's a right path, a right answer, a right destiny. But what if that belief is the root of your suffering? What if the endless search for meaning is actually keeping you from living? You don't need to know why the sun rises to feel its warmth. You don't need to understand love to give it. You don't need to solve life to live it. And here's the most powerful shift Camus offers. Happiness isn't found. It's built. In rebellion. In defiance. In choosing life, even when it makes no sense. Especially when it makes no sense. Because that's when you're most alive, not when you're safe in an answer, but when you're brave in the unknown. The search for meaning tells you to wait, to analyze, to withhold your full presence until the universe proves itself. But rebellion says, I will live now. I will love now. I will create meaning, not wait for it. So ask yourself, what are you postponing until you understand everything? What part of your life are you holding back because it doesn't fit into a perfect narrative? What if you released the search and embraced the absurdity? What if you stopped trying to make life make sense and started living like it already does? We were told that the good life is the one with answers. But Camus flips that. The good life is the one with courage. The one where you wake up, even in the face of the absurd, and say, I choose to live. Not because it makes sense, but because I'm here. Because the sky is beautiful. Because the coffee is hot. Because laughter still erupts even in the void. And this isn't a philosophy to make you feel good. It's a philosophy to make you feel alive. Camus doesn't offer comfort. He offers confrontation. He dares you to stop hiding behind the illusion of meaning and to step into the fire of freedom, to take ownership of your life with no excuses, no waiting, no guarantees. You'll never be happy searching for meaning because meaning is not a discovery. It's a decision. You decide what matters. You decide what's worth the pain. You decide what story to tell. And the absurd doesn't cancel that, it demands it. It says, nothing is written, so write. Nothing is promised, so give. Nothing is sacred, so cherish everything. Camus lived in a time of war, of collapse, of existential terror, and he still chose to live, to write, to love. He wasn't naive, he was radical. He looked at death and said, yes, but still. He looked at suffering and said, yes, but still. He looked at the silence of the universe and said, yes, but still, I will live. That is the fire we need now. Not more theories, not more spiritual blueprints, but the courage to be here, fully, without needing a reason, without needing permission, without needing the universe to validate us. Because maybe the highest form of happiness isn't found at the end of a search. Maybe it's found in the refusal to leave life unlived while we wait for an answer that will never come. So now we're standing in front of a mirror with no frame, no border, no background. Just us. Just the raw truth of being alive in a world that doesn't explain itself. Camus didn't ask us to escape this truth. He asked us to embrace it. And that's where most people resist. We want stories. We want gods. We want to believe that all this pain will add up to something. That every heartbreak, every loss, every failure has to mean something. But what if it doesn't? What if life isn't a story, it's a moment? We're terrified of that idea. Because if life has no guaranteed meaning, then we're left with the terrifying possibility that it's all up to us. No blueprint, no cosmic guide, just freedom. Absolute, terrifying freedom. And yet, that's the most powerful place a human being can stand. Because only when you realize the world doesn't owe you meaning can you start creating your own. Not as a passive receiver of purpose, but as an artist of the absurd. And that's what Camus invites us to become, artists of the absurd. Not seekers of answers, but creators of presence. He shows us that the pursuit of meaning is often a distraction from the act of living. We become philosophers of our own paralysis. We sit in rooms reading books, asking questions, hoping life will reveal itself like a puzzle. But life isn't a puzzle. It's a wave. It crashes. It lifts. It pulls you under. And when you try to explain it, you miss it. You miss the ride. So what do? We rebel. Not with violence. Not with despair. But with joy. With laughter. With defiance. With the audacity to live fully in a world that won't give us a reason why. Camus called it the revolt. The moment we stop asking why and start saying yes, yes to the absurd, yes to the silence, yes to the meaningless beauty of this one wild life. But how do you live like that when everything in you still wants answers? You start small. You stop asking life to be perfect. You stop demanding that your job, your partner, your art, your path must fulfill some grand ideal. And instead, you pay attention. You taste your food. You listen to music without analyzing it. You hold someone's hand without asking what it means. You stop trying to make every moment valuable, and you start making it real. Because that's what we're really chasing with meaning, value. We want to know our life matters, that our suffering isn't wasted, and that our actions echo beyond us. But Camus flips that completely. He says, stop asking life to matter. Make it matter. Plant your feet in the absurd and build a temple with your bare hands. Not because it's eternal, but because it's here, now, and that is enough. We're so used to deferring life. We tell ourselves, once I understand my purpose, then I'll start living. But what if your purpose is to live before you understand? What if understanding is not the prerequisite for joy, but the result of it? What if meaning only begins to appear once you stop chasing it and start dancing in the chaos? Camus would say that most people live like exiles in their own lives, always one step removed, always observing, never fully committing. Because commitment means choosing without guarantees, loving without reasons, acting without certainty. And that's exactly what freedom demands. You cannot be free and safe at the same time. You cannot be alive and unbroken. To live is to risk, to feel, to fall. So ask yourself, what are you avoiding because you haven't found the meaning yet? What part of your life are you holding hostage until you get cosmic permission to begin? What if you stopped waiting and just started? What if you accepted that meaning might never come and lived anyway? This is what separates Camus from despair. He doesn't say life is hopeless. He says it's challenging. And that challenge is sacred. It forces you to choose, to be awake, to be present. Because when there is no script, every word you speak becomes more powerful. Every gesture becomes a declaration. Every moment becomes a chance to say, I am here. I am alive. I am enough. And let's not lie, this kind of life requires immense courage. It's easier to search than to surrender. Easier to distract than to dive in. Easier to believe that someone, somewhere, has the answer than to realize the answer might be, live anyway, laugh anyway, love anyway, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. As layers the truth we avoid, you can waste your entire life looking for a reason not to waste it. You can spend decades building the perfect philosophy, the most sophisticated theory, and still miss the moment your child looks at you with pure love. Still miss the sunset, still miss the music, still miss the kiss. Because you were too busy searching for what it all means. Camus would say, forget what it means. What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it demand of you right now? Can you give yourself to it without needing to possess it? Can you love without needing to understand? Can you suffer without demanding compensation? Can you live without needing a reward? That's the true rebellion. Not to escape the absurd, but to dance with it. To go to work. To fall in love. To write your book. To raise your child. To grieve your losses, to eat your favorite meal, all without needing a metaphysical justification. Just because you're alive, just because you can. And yes, people will call you insane. They'll say you're avoiding the big questions. But in truth, you're living the only answer there is, presence. Not explanation, not justification. Presence. You're not avoiding the absurd, you're embracing it. You're not scared of the silence, you're singing into it. There's a scene Camus never wrote, but it lives in this philosophy. A man stands in a field at dusk, his hands dirty from work, his heart broken from love, his eyes tired from seeing too much, and he smiles. Not because life made sense, but because he was there for all of it. That smile is the revolution. That smile is the meaning. So now ask yourself, what would your life feel like if you stopped trying to make it perfect and started making it real? What would change if you accepted the absurd, not as an enemy, but as a companion? What if the absence of meaning wasn't a void but a canvas? You are not here to solve life. You are here to live it, fully, fiercely, freely, without waiting, without searching, without apology. The only way to defeat the absurd is to look it in the eye and say, I see you, and I choose life anyway. Now we stand on the other side of the storm. Not because the storm passed, but because we stopped trying to escape it. We stopped waiting for a shelter called meaning to appear, and instead we learned how to dance in the rain. That's what Camus was trying to teach us, not to run from the absurd, but to become something powerful inside it. There's something sacred about a human being who has looked into the void and decided to live anyway. That kind of courage isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, unshakable, and free. We spend our lives chasing definitions of happiness, but Camus asks something deeper. What if happiness isn't about fulfillment, but rebellion? What if joy isn't about achieving something, but in refusing to let despair have the final word? What if meaning isn't something we find, but something we refuse to let define us? These aren't just philosophical games. These are survival tools for a world that will never explain itself. When we let go of the search for meaning, we don't fall into hopelessness. We fall into something more real. We fall into presence. Suddenly, we're not living for the future, for some grand resolution. We're living for this breath, this moment, and this cup of coffee, this act of kindness that no one will ever see. And in doing so, we become something rare, someone who is alive without needing a reason to be. Camus isn't telling us to stop thinking. He's telling us to stop waiting. Stop waiting for life to be ready. Stop waiting for your calling to be revealed. Stop waiting for permission to be happy. The absurd is not a wall, it's an invitation to live without guarantees, to act without final answers, to write your story without knowing how it ends. And maybe that's the only kind of freedom that's real. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by the belief that somewhere out there is a truth that will finally make everything okay. Maybe it's a perfect job, a perfect person, a perfect philosophy, a perfect moment. But the longer you search, the more exhausted you feel, because the search becomes the cage. It keeps you running in circles, always chasing, never arriving. Camus breaks that cycle. He says, stop, breathe, look around. This is it. This is the show. The curtain's already up. The stage is yours. You don't need a script. You don't need applause. You just need to act fiercely, authentically, with all the fire you've been saving for someday. Because someday isn't coming, and the absurd doesn't care. But you do, and that's enough. And here's the most radical truth of all. Once you stop needing life to have meaning, everything becomes more meaningful. A walk becomes sacred. A conversation becomes eternal. A failure becomes beautiful. Because you're no longer measuring moments against an invisible standard. You're just living them, feeling them, owning them. And in that, you become the meaning. But be careful. The world will try to pull you back. It'll say you need a purpose, you need a plan, you need a label. But all of that is fear dressed as wisdom. The truth is, you don't need anything but this moment and the courage to live it fully. That's not recklessness. That's clarity. We've built a culture where meaning is a product, marketed, sold, gamified. Self-help books promise to unlock it. Gurus claim to deliver it. Religions, ideologies, systems, they all say, follow us and you'll understand. But Camus says, maybe not understanding is the beginning of freedom. Maybe being lost is the beginning of being real. Maybe the only honest response to the absurd is to laugh, to create, to love, to rebel. So how do we live this out? We live it by choosing to show up every day. Not because it makes sense, but because it matters to us. We pour ourselves into our art, our work, our relationships, not because they're perfect, but because they're ours. We stop asking the world to validate us. We stop outsourcing our worth to some cosmic scoreboard. We take the wheel and we drive, even if we don't know where the road goes. And when the darkness comes, we don't run. We don't hide. We sit with it. We feel it. But we don't let it define us. Because the absurd can only break us if we believe it has power. But once we see it clearly, once we name it, it loses its control. It becomes the backdrop for our freedom. The contrast that makes our choices burn brighter. Ask yourself, What would you do differently if you stopped needing your life to have a grand meaning? What would you create if you weren't afraid it wouldn't matter? Who would you love if you didn't need a future to justify the risk? These are not abstract questions. These are doorways. And the only key is your willingness to walk through, even if you don't know what's on the other side. Camus wasn't trying to depress us. He was trying to set us free. Free from the tyranny of perfection. Free from the weight of cosmic expectations. Free from the illusion that life owes us clarity. It doesn't. But it does offer us something far more powerful: existence. And that existence, raw and unfinished and absurd, is the canvas for everything beautiful. So the next time you feel lost, the next time you feel like nothing makes sense, remember, that feeling is not your enemy. It's your awakening. It's the moment the old stories start to fall apart and something real begins. Not something easy, not something certain, but something alive. You'll never be happy searching for meaning. But you might just be happy if you stop searching and start living. Not for a reason, not for a reward, but because you can, because you are. Because this is your one wild chance to be a flame in the dark, to be a question with no answer, to be a song that doesn't need lyrics, to be simply gloriously, absurdly alive. That's where Camus leaves us, not with a solution, but with a challenge. Will you keep searching for a life that explains itself? Or will you start living a life that needs no explanation? The answer is yours. The rebellion is yours. The moment is now.